Episode 2, the Black Powder Podcast. Here we go.
Woo!
Yeah, so this week I wanted to change it up a bit. You know, last week we had a Redstone Firearms on out of Burbank, California. Freaking awesome. Jonathan, my guy, he's out there doing this for the right reasons. This week I wanted to bring in one of my good buddies, one of my favorite people, based on our few and far interactions. Nonetheless, it was awesome. My guy Savage from the We Like Shooting podcast. Here he is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I feel honored. This is great. This is the coolest intro I've ever gotten.
Well, I expect nothing from the best from myself and from my friends. So if you don't cut the mustard, if you don't pull the rope in the same direction, we're not going to have you on. So the expectations are beyond expectations for you this day. And we're going to jump into it. Okay.
You got me sweating already. I'm like, I got the vapors.
Quite excellent. Quite excellent. So a couple weeks ago, the Supreme Court of the United States decided to let stand the judicial activists, because there's one thing I want everybody to understand about qualified immunity. This is not a law. This is not anything that has been regulated or whatever you want to say by an administration. This hasn't been worked through the chambers of Congress, through them nor the Senate, the House nor the Senate. This is purely a judicial edict that states, and I quote, give me 1 second here. Basically, if an officer has not previously destroyed your constitutional rights in a case that has already been litigated, the officer that may commit the same type of offense against a citizen cannot be held responsible because it has never been litigated in a court of law. So it's basically the infinity sign as far as what a police officer can do to you, and you have no legal recourse. How does that make you feel?
Well, it all comes down to a single thing: accountability. If any representative from the government cannot be held responsible because of their actions, that's basically the same as taxation without representation. It is making somebody immune to being able to be held accountable for any actions they may have taken. That is unacceptable. No servant of the people, of me, of you, should have more rights and more protections than me or you. They are citizens just like the rest of us. And if we afford those servants, public servants, whether they're police officers or politicians or what have you, more rights than we have, then you are de facto making everybody who is not a member of the government a second-class citizen, and that is bullshit.
It's utter bullshit. It reminded me of a case out of Colorado where a SWAT team went to this guy's house looking for somebody. They basically destroyed this dude's whole house.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to remember his name right now. I think it was Leo Leck. Okay, so I would like everybody to go out there for shits and giggles. If you don't trust anything I'm saying, please Google it. But Leo Leck was in Colorado. He's out of Colorado. Every window on this house was torn out the frame. Every door was kicked in. And they were looking for somebody that wasn't there and never lived there. When he tried to resolve this issue, because they effectively red tagged his house, they said they had no legal obligation to compensate him for that. And it was under the premise of qualified immunity. Like I said, it's the state against you, where they say, if we have not litigated any issue that, and let's say directly in resolve to my guy Leo. So if there wasn't a case before Leo where the state destroyed somebody's home and it was proven to be against that homeowner's constitutional rights, they cannot be held responsible for what they did. And this is one of those things that, you know, I was talking to my daughter yesterday. She's 16 going on 17. And I was like, in civics, do they teach you about your rights as an American and how you need to utilize them and the founding of this country? And she straight up said no without any hesitation. And this is the situation with the Supreme Court, that people need to understand when they elect these Democrats and Republicans. These people are not on your team. They're not on Team America.
No.
They can wave the flag, but when I think of America, I think of the first 10 amendments. I mean, you could go further down the line.
I mean, 14th, not a bad amendment. Has some issues, definitely has some issues, but not bad.
The 14th, like when Kanye first said that, I was like, this motherfucker's crazy. And then I was like, holy shit, he's not crazy.
He's not.
No,
nope.
Because it did not actually end slavery. It just changed the definition.
Yep, it just kind of moved the line. It's like, not everybody's a slave.
No.
But.
Yeah. Well, here in California, they use prison labor to this day for license plates that old people think that shit wasn't real. But yeah, they still print the license plates in California prisons. They still use prisoners as labor forces. But the state that comes to mind is Louisiana, because they actually have farms.
Oh, what?
They have farms where they have labor that's not getting essentially paid, and they're turning profits off of their farms in Louisiana.
They're literally working on the same fucking land.
Same land, doing the same thing. Louisiana, because right now Louisiana is coming up on some federal investigations because their state police may be one of the most corrupt organizations in America, and that's is saying a lot of shit. Because
I mean, don't tell the ATF. Don't tell them.
I mean, the ATF is an organization where even Republicans and to some smaller extent Democrats know that they are useless because they haven't updated their budget, their computer system. They're still using microfiche, as far as I know. In their,
I'm not upset with that.
No,
I'm okay with that.
And I'm not going to say anything because I like that meme where it says ATF should be a store and not a government law enforcement agency. But what they do does not truly reflect the will of the people anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for a lot of other government agencies. And I'm not anti-government. I'm not one of those extremists. I just want to see this country live up to what it was meant to be. And
the government, right? The government is supposed to support and defend the people and help build up the people, make the people wealthier, more well off, give some defense, give opportunities, but you're not supposed to go out and find ways to put people in jail for crimes that hurt no one.
Precisely, because the war on drugs, that's when you were talking, the war on drugs immediately came to mind. And the fact that Nixon's own people said it was a direct extension of Jim Crow.
Yep.
As far as policy, and they wanted to put black faces on the evening news as far as criminality and drug usage and stuff like that. When in fact, and I mentioned this on your podcast, blacks and whites use drugs at a similar clip, but you guys are slightly winning by like 0.2%, 3%. You guys are winning as usual, which I don't appreciate. If we're gonna have
hey.
Go ahead.
I got up my game, I guess. I got up my game. I'm sorry.
You people are beating us in drug usage, but
see, I can't say. What do you mean, you people? I can't say.
This is just the information I've gathered. So don't get mad at me.
I'm not mad. You're right. It's funny. It's great.
You people. Okay. So but you're 4 to 10 times more likely, depending on your municipality, to be arrested while black while having drugs or using drugs.
Yep.
Than you people.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. So, and like I said on your podcast, I firmly believe racism in America doesn't exist to the extent that my father realized, because it's no longer socially acceptable. But in the judicial system, it is just as fluid and flourishing as it was in my father's era,
if not more so. I mean, all you have to do is look at the prison population and what percentage black people are and other minorities are to white people. It's not even comparable. It's ridiculous. It's fucking insane.
I don't appreciate you calling my fellow Caucasoids white people, because you guys are pink, yellow, and many other colors of the rainbow, depending on your.
I have a beige tint. It doesn't come through on this camera, but I have more of a beige.
You know, I do view you as a more of an olive tinted guy than anything, and I view you as wonderful. That's why I called you my friend earlier before we even got on. I said you're my friend.
Well, you know what? There is a Hernandez in my ancestry. I found that out when I went through ancestry.com. I'm a Hernandez a ways back.
On the scale from jalapenos to ghost peppers, where are you at?
I'm at like the Taco Bell mild sauce. Okay, that's where I'm at.
Please don't but Hernandez ever again.
No, but I eat like spicier food than my wife can handle. So if that gets me a little bit more,
I got so many suspect questions now because you told me her ethnicity.
Yeah.
One of the peppers I mentioned is native to her country.
Right.
And me personally, I love the food from there.
Mm.
And for her, well, I can't even diss because, you know, my wife's family is Mexican, and my sister-in-law thinks ketchup is spicy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, what?
Yeah. Well, I tell that to her because she can't handle any kind of heat. When she gets heat, she's like, "Oh my god, this is horrible." And I'm like, "Oh wow, I bet you think ketchup is spicy." And you know, so in closing about your lack of spiciness and the, you know, hold up, we got to go back. We got to open this box one more time.
All right, go ahead.
The British Empire went to that country specifically for spices.
Yes. And they robbed the shit out of that country. Trillions of dollars worth in today's money. Yeah. Trillions.
Well, one of the things that a lot of people don't know is the first usage of a quote unquote machine gun was in that country against a civilian population rising up against a colonial power in the British Empire.
That wouldn't surprise me.
That was the first time a Maxim machine gun was used in, I don't know how they called it, a combat situation, but that was the first time a machine gun was used in the world against a opposing force.
It wouldn't surprise me. We just watched an Indian movie the other day that was about this massacre of 20,000 men, women, and children that were peacefully protesting the British Empire. They gunned them all down. That might have been the situation. That might have been that specific situation. It was before World War I, so that would be around that time.
Yeah,
and it's going to the Oscars, I think, this year. But it's a great movie, very enlightening, and it's great because one of the victims snuck into England and straight up gunned down the commander who issued the orders to kill all those people. So slightly happy ending to the story.
If I was on the jury, I wouldn't convict him.
Yep. Not fucking guilty.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I don't understand about England. They were one of the most brutal, oppressive governments and agencies of government that has ever existed. And now they are a soft-footed, tender-backed gaggle of men who sit down to pee. I mean, I don't, they still have their SAS. They still have elements of the old British Empire, but in general, they don't put their best foot forward anymore. I don't know what happened to the British Empire. Have they become that refined where they no longer have any brutality amongst them?
Well, let's be fair. The most hardcore part about the British Empire was Ireland and Scotland. And I'm Irish, so I'd know.
I tell people all the freaking time, I would not travel to most countries in the world right now, but for one reason or another, except for one country. I would go to Ireland because my last name is Matthews and it's Welsh. But
Welsh, there you go.
Yeah, but my mother has greenish hazel eyes and reddish hair. So I know I'm Irish, not that far back, enough to where I feel I could go there. And prior to you coming on, and I was singing Anaconda de Vita, I was listening to Irish pub songs.
Well, now when you say you people, you actually mean our people. So now it's our people now.
That's where I felt like I could say you people because it's just like saying my ninja. You know what I'm saying? That's why I feel like I could do that because I'm ambidextrously interracial.
There you go.
I got it all.
You got it all, man. The best of both worlds.
I don't know about both worlds because I love Chinese culture and Japanese culture. And that's why I got Wu-Tang Forever tatted on me, but I can drive. I'm just talking shit.
Oh shit.
I'm just but I did grow up in Rolling Heights, and that's from my SoCal people. You know what I'm talking about. So anyway, civil asset forfeiture, since we're talking about how the government takes from people.
There you go.
And I was earlier I was offline. I was talking about how there was this pastor. I was traveling through the great state of Oklahoma, and he had his offerings with him, and he got pulled over.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked to search his vehicle. He's a good American. Oh yeah, I have nothing to hide. They search his vehicle. They find his offerings, and they seize it.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, you need to prove where you actually got this $15,000 from. This is your and I highway patrol that is going in particular the state of Oklahoma, but I've heard of this in California. It's pretty much a nationwide edict because even the states that tamp down on civil asset forfeiture, a lot of police forces in response to that, they referred their cases to federal agents.
Mm-hmm.
So those federal agents took over the civil asset forfeiture. So they circumvented the state laws that prevented them from seizing citizens' property without due process, because the feds will take all your shit as easily as they can under any circumstance. And we all know that.
Yep.
So,
and you know what? Cryptocurrency stops this.
Yeah, I got you. Because Oklahoma went as so far to install card readers in their state highway patrol cars that could tell them how much money you had in your bank accounts as well as credit cards.
Yep.
So cryptocurrency seems to be an answer to this, but we're seeing the government take more aggressive action towards regulating that industry too. So Where do you think that's going to go eventually?
Well, it depends. Just like gun laws being completely and fucking ineffective, most of the laws that they will try and write around cryptocurrency will be completely fucking ineffective. And the simple answer is because they can't control open source code that doesn't reside in the US, that isn't centralized in the US, and where your funds don't exist within the borders of the United States. They exist on the blockchain.
Got you.
And as long as they don't have your private keys, they don't have your fucking money.
Do you think you'll see more and more? Because I saw that Elon Musk, they started accepting cryptocurrency for purchase of their vehicles.
They will start again. Yeah, he's filed to allow it. Yes.
So, with that being said, where do you think the United States government is going to move towards? Are they going to address this in a free market fashion? I can't even say that shit. Like,
no, I think they're good. I don't care who's in charge. I know they're going to make stupid decisions.
Yeah.
And I mean, well, shit, because this is going to both span between civil whatever you said. I can't even speak right now. See, a month without having a beer, and this is where I'm at. No, but
we'll talk about that later.
Asset forfeiture seizure spans from this to the other one, which is the war against billionaires, supposedly the war against billionaires, which it really isn't. But let's try and keep with the civil asset forfeiture seizure. So again, it comes back to due process. If you are circumventing due process, again, you are giving more rights to the government. You're making a special class of people, whether it's the police, whether it's the feds, it doesn't matter. You are giving them special rights that they do not have a right to. This is your property. Fourth Amendment, they must have a fucking warrant in order to be able to seize your assets. And it has to be very specifically tailored by a judge. If they don't have that, they do not have the right to take your property. And the fact that this is just judicial, I don't know what the phrase you use, but judicial activism ruling, and there's no law around it, it just goes to show that it's not a law. It's not a fucking law. If it's not a law, then it's not a real thing. It has to be on the books to be a fucking law. And if it's just kind of in the ether, well, we've done this before, it's precedent, but there's no law, so we're just kind of going to do this for the hell of it. No. Fourth Amendment, you need a warrant. Otherwise, get the fuck off, or get the fuck out, back the fuck off.
Well, I think every American in essence would agree with every fucking word you said. But the fact of the matter is, we have segments of our society that thinks the government could do no wrong only when their choice in government is in power.
Absolutely.
And those people are called Democrats and Republicans.
Yep.
And the thing about them is, like, I can speak for, I live in the California that was a republic, because the official name is California is California Republic, but it's no longer a republic. And we recently had a recall on our governor that was leaning towards successfully recalling him until Larry, I'm black but I have orange lips elder jumped into the scenario. I talked about this on my last podcast, and I'm still upset about it. I got to be honest with you, because I cannot stand Gavin Newsom. I know you had told me you wish Gavin Newsom was the governor of your state or something to that
effect.
No.
That's
what you told me.
No. Don't you put those words in my mouth, Ricky Bobby. Don't you?
I literally said that quote today at work. I'm so glad you said that.
Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. But no. Yeah, I mean, Gavin Newsom and my guy, oh my God. I forgot the name of my governor right now. Again, this is the first beer.
Gavin Newsom.
First beer I've had in a month. Oh my God. But yeah, it's like, I don't even know what to say. Like they just don't give a shit anymore. They're taking as much power as they possibly can acting outside of the power that they are able to exert, and it's frustrating because they shouldn't be able to do that, yet because they belong to a specific party that happens to be in charge of the state, that specific party will always overlook any wrongdoing that those governors may do. And it goes for the Republican side too. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. Those parties will always forgive their leaders no matter what, because you always have to have party purity. And that's the bullshit that pisses me off so much, because if you disagree, if you're a part of one party and you disagree, suddenly you're far the other side, and vice versa. It's this divide and push to the extremes, or otherwise you're one or the other. It's infuriating. Like, most people I think would be centrist, right? Like, most people, like, here's a bunch of shit that we can agree on and we're kind of all together on this, but for some reason these fuckers off on either side are telling us what we should believe in.
That's when you were speaking, what came to mind was Dave Chappelle, actually, because he was talking about that transsexual comedian and how he's trying to help her. I will use her proper pronouns.
Yeah.
And how he was trying to help her. And when he was saying his jokes and the transgender community jumped all on him, and that comedian that was transgender said, "Hey, look, I know this person personally. This is where they're coming from. This is how they feel, and this, that, and the other thing." They destroyed that person in the sense that 6 days after she said that, she committed suicide.
Yep.
And they refuse to take responsibility for that, while they're bashing Dave Chappelle for what he said. But in fact, his friend that he said he would take care of her daughter and make sure that she had a chance to succeed in America, that requires higher education, that requires the skill set, he stepped forward and created a trust fund for her daughter. And that's not being acknowledged, or the narrative in these vacuums that our politics reside in, because we no longer can speak to critical thinking issues. We no longer can understand nuance and what people are saying without getting offended based on what side of the spectrum we line up on. And that's where this country is failing itself, because we cannot well, let me back that up. We all want the same thing. That's what, when you're saying that we're all centrists. I want my kids to have a chance to succeed based on how they proceed forward with their work ethic and everything like that. We all want a roof over our head. We all want clothes on our back, and we all want a full belly.
Yep.
And if you can agree on those basic concepts of human existence, you're basically a Republican or a Democrat. Because they cannot agree on that. You know, if you put forth in Congress just a resolution to acknowledge the fact that we want certain things in our life, like food in our stomach, clothes on our back, roof, and we all want that for the most part, because there's elements in our society that will not want that at all. But if you can acknowledge that, if you're raising a couple of kids, a family, or whatever, have a wife or a husband, whether you're a same-sex couple or a heterosexual couple or whatever it is, if you can acknowledge that we want those basic elements, safety, security, and all of that in our lives, then where are we at as a society? It's clear and basic. And what you're seeing now with these Republicans and Democrats, you can't even get them to agree on what day of the week it is, just for the fact they want to disagree just to disagree.
Yeah, it has gotten so bad in our country that it doesn't matter which party is in power, the other party will do whatever it takes to
ever.
stop the other one from accomplishing anything. And sometimes it's justified. A lot of times, but again, it's like whenever one party's in power, they want to reverse everything that the previous party or administration did. And
Yeah.
then when it flips back, it's the same. It's just the opposite. So both are just totally trying to go at each other. Nobody is working with our best interests in mind. It's all about getting the other guy and putting one over on them. But I think it's all a show. It really is a fucking show, because at the end of the day, all of these assholes that are in charge are getting rich off of all the power and information that they have at their fingertips, while putting on the show that they're actually, they actually care about us, when they just really care about making themselves, richer and give themselves more power. That's what it really comes down to me.
Now, the only reason I'm specifically mentioning Mitch McConnell is because I looked this up more recently, but I know this applies to his Democratic rivals like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer too. I have no doubt about this. But Mitch McConnell has effectively been in government work since the early 70s.
Wow.
And at this moment in time, he's worth about $23 million.
Yeah. Well, he can't hold a candle. He can't hold a candle to Pelosi, though.
No, but no. I'm saying, yeah, Pelosi are right there, and I need to look up how far she's up in this game.
About
But
200 to 300 million.
Over 50% of Congress is consisted of millionaires.
Mm-hmm.
And that represents about 10% of the regular population. 10-15% of the United States citizens are millionaires, but it's over 50% in Congress.
Yep.
That just goes to show you. And I was telling one of my homeboys recently, like, he asked me, I said the right is no better than the left. And he's like, how can you say that statement? And I was like, simply because that they're eating out of the same trough as the left when it all boils down to it, because it's you versus the elitists. It's not you versus left wingers or you versus right wingers. It's you versus the elitist populists that are pushing forward narratives that have us thinking that person that we see in the grocery store is possibly our enemies. I was telling somebody at my job about 2 weeks ago, every day we go to work and you work with people who voted for Trump and you work for people who voted for Biden, but we get the job done. And then you go home and you watch your chosen news story or news source, and they're telling you why you should hate those people who voted for Trump and those people who voted for Biden. What they're not telling you is both segments are jockeying for one party rule. And there has never been in the existence of recorded mankind a one party rule that has overseen the bountiful beautiness of liberty for any populace.
Nope. Once it's down to one, shit's just going downhill.
Like California, we have crazy ass liberals who want to teach kids in kindergarten about transgenderism, and we should be making sure they can read, write, and arithmetic. In Texas, you have conservatives removing critical thinking from the curriculum and instilling patriotic curriculum that overlooks the fact that we need to understand that American history isn't this lily white virgin who shuns all suitors in hopes that her Prince Charming will eventually show up. Because
we did a lot of bad stuff,
there's a lot of things that you could question.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad decisions that killed a lot of people that weren't white
Yeah.
from Americans founding on forward. So you have to accept and learn about the bad stuff so you know not to repeat it in the future. But no matter how many times we seem to learn the same lesson, we don't seem to remember it.
Well, it's sad because America is the greatest experiment in liberty that has ever existed. And I can say that as a black man with 100% certainty because I have read the original intent of this nation thoroughly, and I'm a little bit of a history buff, and I'm like, fuck, these motherfuckers were on to something. But the fact of the matter is, it's never been implemented fully because of a small segment of society that decided we don't necessarily want to give up our fair share of power. And my homeboy on social media, he was called Whiskey Rebellion. George Washington, as president or leader of this country, came down hard on those moonshiners who said, we're not paying taxes on this whiskey. Yep. Go fuck yourself.
Yep.
They brought in the American military and shut them down. And that was like literally less than 5 years after the Revolutionary War. I don't remember the exact date. Don't quote me on
the Whiskey
that.
Rebellion. Yeah. I'd have to look it up too. But yeah, you're right. And it's interesting. It's funny because these people that wrote the Constitution and the foundation of all the laws in this country, ideally, it's amazing. Excluding 3/4 compromise, obviously that was an issue.
Yeah, 3/5.
Sorry, it's the 3/5 again. First period of month.
Don't short our fourth.
Yeah, I was really bad at math, so if it comes to fractions, I just don't trust me. But yeah, so I mean, so that was obviously wrong. But I mean, if you look at the whole body of it, the ideals were pretty. They were revolutionary, obviously at the time, but the problem is they could not live up to their own words, as it were. I mean, you look at George Washington, you look at Thomas Jefferson. I mean, these guys were not living up to the words that were put down on the paper, but at least the words were put down on the paper. So when we got to the point after the Civil War, when, Lincoln could put forth the Emancipation Proclamation and say, hey, all men are created equal, all men. And let's expand that a little bit. All men, all women, all whatever you identify as, let's just make a blanket statement so that everybody understands that you are all equal in America. That's it.
That should have been it, but it took a while to get there.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things Lincoln said were revolutionary in itself. But and that's what the Republican Party was founded on, and that's how they like to toot their horn. But I don't think people have ever separated political ideology and political party, because that's two separate things.
Yep.
People like all the time. This is what I hate, because I've seen it 2 or 3 times in the last couple months, where they're quoting Malcolm X and what he's talking about with liberals, how they're some of the most deceitful animals out there. And I firmly believe he was spot on. And the people that are saying that are typically conservative, or who are posting those quotes from Malcolm X on liberals. They're typically conservative. And I always rebut them by saying, so Bull Connor and George Wallace in Birmingham, Alabama, you're saying those were hardcore liberal Democrats. Can you say that with absolute certainty? That just those two guys who were, George Wallace was segregation now, segregation forever.
Oof.
Bull Connor brought in the Birmingham Fire Department against children and turned fire hoses against them.
Against kids.
Yeah. And I'm like, people use their ideologies in a politically expedient manner whereas the lacking of critical thinking is not present because they want to look at the Democrats from the early 60s, 50s, and whatnot as the same Democrats as today. I don't think AOC would support Democrats in Alabama turning hoses against children.
Probably not.
I probably don't see. I don't see that happening. So the lack of critical thinking, whereas you can use that nuance that I was talking about and the actual facts behind the matter, I just think Americans lack that ability for the simple reason that we get on, when we get home from work, we go on our social media, we go on our news channels, and they're telling us what we want to hear to be comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're comfortable, you're complacent. And when you're complacent, you don't think because other people are thinking for you. And that's one of the reasons why I had to have you on my podcast, because you didn't strike me as one of those people that are complacent or lacked critical thinking skills.
Well, I'm not Jeremy, so there is that.
I love everybody, and like what you were saying earlier when we were offline, I'm fucking terrible with names.
So
So
he was the big angry Marine that just basically hates everybody and will
dig that
yeah
part. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, where do you think the state, after all we've discussed at this point, what do you think the state of the union is?
I think that the State of the Union is probably at the worst point it's been in my lifetime. And that's the scary part,
That is
because I honest to God feel that the politicians have done such a good job at dividing this nation and putting everybody against everybody and finding every single issue that could possibly inflame and outrage a any given population and cause and force people to be afraid and force people to be angry. And whenever people are angry and afraid, they lose their ability, like you were saying, to think critically and logically. If you are in a constant state of fear and anxiety, you don't have that ability to use reason and logic to think through what is going on. And that's part of the human condition. And that's the reason why I'm I'm gonna spill the beans here. Like I got my master's in communication here, so I study news and I study how people communicate and why and what is effective in psychology on it and stuff. So news makes its money, and from news, all the big corporations that fund the news make their money off of your fear. That's ultimately what it comes down to. It's kind of like the gamblers. I don't know if you've ever heard about this, but a gambler, they go to Vegas, and if they win big, it's like yay, and they're happy because they won. But when they lose, they get that fear, they get that anxiety, so they feel they have to win it back, so they put in more money, and they put in more money, and then they put in more money. And I know this because I worked at a casino for a little while as a security guy. So I've watched people win 30 grand in a night off of a couple of good hands, and then they spent the rest of that night giving every single dollar and more back because they had that idea that they could win it big, but they didn't know that the odds were against them. So the casino, just like the government, uses that fear that you're going to lose, but you're going to keep losing, but you could win, but you're actually just going to keep losing as long as you keep on playing into the system. And the system is built to take advantage of you. And that's, again, why, I don't get to talk a lot about it on the show because I don't talk about crypto and stuff, but that's why I'm big into crypto, because crypto is, what a Venn diagram is? It's basically those two circles that are overlaid over each other. And this is the system and this is crypto. And it doesn't matter how much the system wants to be in charge of crypto, it can't be. And that's why it is so amazing, because that's where the freedom is when you are able to own your own property. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. And that's why the system is afraid of the people when they have access to crypto. And it's the other way around. It's the reverse situation. Whereas in previous times where the system is in control of your money, the bank is in control of your money, the Fed is in control of your money, none of those systems are in control of crypto because it's decentralized. Nobody has control over it.
Do you think the system can be defeated?
Yes, 100%. And I think it can be done peacefully.
That's my thing, because I had some people that I work with. They were like looking at January 6th as a final moment where they said finally somebody stood up to the government. And I was like, I don't agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I said that because when we look at a peaceful transition, which we must exhaust before anything, that election had roughly, some would say 40, some would say 80 court cases that went before judges who have been appointed by both sides of the aisle,
Mm-hmm.
and shot down left and right
Mm-hmm.
as being false.
Yep.
And I was like, they didn't, they had their day in court.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were like, well, what about the riots of 2020? And I was like, George Floyd, for that particular incident, did not have his day in court.
Yep.
And
100%.
that's why the citizens took to the streets. And I'm 100% against people's property being destroyed. I believe that property owners should have been the ones on the rooftop, should have been the ones in front of the store saying, if you come to my store with ill intent, I'm going to put a fucking plug in your head.
And a
I'm
lot did. There were a number of them that did.
Yeah. I am not condoning, nor do I ever agree with somebody's property being destroyed in a protest over government actions. If you want to protest government actions, you go to the government. You don't go to private businesses. You don't go to business owners who have more than likely put their whole life into that enterprise, and it's sink or swim for them.
Well, think about it. Who employs people in the community?
Exactly.
The business owners that are there. And if you go and destroy those businesses, you're taking away all those people's jobs that were trying to live and, like you say, provide food, provide shelter, provide security for their families. So burning down people's businesses is the exact opposite of getting your point across. And I think when it came down to January 6th, fuck those guys. But here's what they proved. They proved exactly how weak and toothless the government actually is. If there's any good that came from it, that's the only good that came from it, because a group of completely unarmed people took over the Capitol building.
Yeah. And that's one thing, in my last podcast, I talked about ants versus grasshoppers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you put it in a small octagon, one grasshopper and one ant, and left them to their own vices, 100% the grasshopper would win.
Yep.
But if you put in the ant colony versus the grasshopper, obviously the ant colony is going to eat well that night.
It's going to be a good night.
And that's the power the American people do not understand, because they have divided us into camps and bullshit and flag waving and magic songs and all the like. If you don't line up for the government, then you're anti-government. And that's not the case with me. Me personally, I don't fly the American flag. I fly Revolutionary War flags, because that's where I say America stood at its finest when we had a common enemy that was against us and was against our liberty and our naturally God-given rights. But as it stands now, we have that same enemy, because if you talk shit about the government, if you stand against the government agents, you're branded as a criminal and an outlaw, when in fact that's what this country was founded on. And where I see your point on January 6th, I disagree on the point on January 6th, because this country was in fact started upon a riot with the Boston Tea Party and the Boston Massacre.
Yeah, that's valid. That's absolutely valid.
And this country was founded in pubs. That's why beer and alcohol is important to this country. And I know a lot of Christian type people are going to be like, oh. And
Well,
I say, cheers, mates.
Yeah, cheers.
But
the Christians have had a little bit too much influence on this country. My personal opinion, I don't know if it's yours, just my personal opinion.
I believe in self-religious edict. Where I differ from a lot of Christians in this country is when they want to impose their edicts and beliefs on other Americans, because the Christian church may be the most fragmented entity in the history of mankind.
Well, I mean, the Christian church also might have been, the main factor driving a lot of the issues that, caused a lot of the massacres in America too. Let's be frank about that. And there's not just America, all over the world. I mean, we were talking about India. Let me tell you, the Christians were not kind to people in India. They were not kind to people in Africa. They were not kind to people in South America. So let's just, it's almost like there's a dual power structure in the world, and the religions and government both exist to try and exert power on the people. And that's the thing I hate the most, because the power should ultimately be within the people. The people should have the power over the government, over religion, because when you take that power away from the people, what do they have? They have nothing.
Nothing. And more recently, one of my more liberal friends asked me if liberty was absolute. And I was like, absolutely. It is absolute. And then he was like, well, when have we had liberty? And I was like, the Stone Age. when mankind lived more tribal and primitive, you lived as by your means, and you went out and did stuff. And then as groups started to band together, some groups became more powerful than others. And then you see the progression of government by democracy. And I firmly believe democracy is mob rule and bullshit. Democracy is on par with communism to me.
Yep.
I believe in
democracy.
I believe in republicanism, where the people are the power, and if the people say the government has gone too far, then the people removes the government, and then we progress again. But Americans are afraid to start all over because we have been boxed into these corners. And with all that being said, I want to go into my favorite amendment.
Okay.
Which is the second.
Let's go there.
Let's say the Second Amendment was absolute, like I believe liberty is, where you are able to own anything that you can afford effectively. With that being said, I proposed this subject to you previously. In a billionaires war, where billionaires arm themselves according to their wealth and influence, which billionaire that exists right now would come out on top, in your opinion?
Right. Well, I don't think I have to really hesitate on this one because it's a pretty simple choice because it's going to be Elon. Let's just be frank about this
Elon,
because
yeah.
this is the dude that came out, as a flamethrower for a a tchotchke to sell to market for the Boring Company. So I know Elon's going to come out with some shit. It's going to be like he's going to turn the Cybertruck into the Halo truck and put he'll do whatever. Like he can make some space age shit like rods from God, tungsten rods from one of his satellites that he puts up into space. He'll do it. I got him in the front because Bezos, he can't even get all the way into space,
Yeah.
and Bill Gates is too busy trying to breed mosquitoes or whatever. I don't know.
Okay, so let me tell you something about Bill Gates because that's my guy who I think wins.
Okay. All right.
You kind of alluded on it. Mosquitoes kill more human beings than any other animals on Earth.
Okay. All right. Fair
So
point.
if
Fair
Bill
point.
Gates masters mosquitoes, he can unleash them.
You put a lot of thought into this one.
I told you I was prepared for this.
You came at me. You came at you, and you got me. You got me. Biological warfare.
Bill Gates has been working on vaccines, all kinds of biological shit. And based on him utilizing mosquitoes, he could literally take out whole continents if he so chose.
Okay.
Elon Musk would be in his sky dick shooting lasers at people.
Wait, would it be his lasers or would it be the Jewish space lasers? I get confused.
Well, being that Elon Musk is African American, I want to think he's not using Jewish space lasers, but I'm not going to put anything past. What's the guy who owns Virgin Galactic?
Oh, Richard Branson.
Yeah, Richard Branson being down with Israel with the sky lasers, and I'm not going to put anything past it because
Israel makes some cool shit though. They make some pretty awesome weapons, but South Africa does too. I mean, South Africa's got some mean shit.
South Africa and Israel were homies during the apartheid era. And a lot of people don't know that.
I did not know that.
I'm like, the government of Israel, I think, is the enemy of mankind. The Jewish people are not. I have Jewish homies that they were. I have to pause for a second because Black people have a problem saying specifically.
Okay.
Sometimes we'll say pacifically.
Okay.
So that's why I'm pausing before I say specifically. I have some homeboys that were instrumental in the soundtrack of Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle.
Really?
Yeah, they were called Lexicon, and their songs were featured in just about half of that movie.
Oh, cool.
And you got to rock to the rhythm of them, got to get it to them. Rock. Yeah, that was Lexicon. Those are my personal friends.
Oh, that's awesome.
They're two Jewish kids, and I love them to death. But I do not like the government of Israel. I think they are an apartheid regime. I have no qualms in saying that. And I think they should rethink their policy towards the Palestinians, because I ask Americans, I've asked several people this, what would you do for liberty? What would you do for freedom? What would you do for independence? And they were like, anything. And I was like, well, why don't you think other people would do that? You use the weapons that you have available. I don't condone killing civilians or women or children or anything like that.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, I think every human being, every entity, and this is my own personal belief, because some people are going to get mad for what I say right now, from your first heartbeat, deserves the right to self-determination.
Yeah, I think everybody can agree with that.
Not everybody.
They should. They should agree with that.
They should agree with that. But a lot of people don't believe that from your first heartbeat. because it's a clump of cells. I was like, what's that clump?
Oh well, okay, never mind. I wasn't understanding that right, but I mean, we might disagree on that. It's cool. I see where you're coming from. I
That's my
understand.
personal opinion.
Yeah, I got you.
But I don't believe government should tell you how to dictate those personal opinions. So there's the complexity in what I believe. I don't believe government should outlaw anything that directly, and this is where the gray area is, but it's the do no harm principle that I believe. And, some people can line up on either side of that when it comes to what you personally believe in life and the process of it in the first 9 months, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, in conclusion, because I've kept you a pretty decent, close to an hour, and
I can stay for longer. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I know we had some more
here's
stuff.
the thing, and I don't want to limit your prospects or dismiss you, but I want you to be my filler between a lot of people that I'm actually trying to talk to. You're just like,
I'm your side piece. That's what this fucking comes down to.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I want to use you, abuse you, and move on to bigger fish. But that's where I envision you initially as, the side piece type of deal. So that's why I don't want to wear you out. I want to keep you tight. Yeah. But, occasionally I'll stroke your prostate and we'll get the best out of all of this shit.
Okay. I'm on board. I'm on board with that. Give a little, get a little,
Yeah. So, that's where I just wanted to engage you and get you. So I want your final thought on where you think America will be in the next 5 years.
5 years.
Next 5 years, yeah.
Oh God, I'm sorry.
So that goes into the first year of the next administration.
Right. God, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I think we're gonna have a lot of ups and downs. I think mostly it's gonna be down. I think there's gonna be a lot more division, but I do see the hope. And I harp on this now because it's like, again, they don't give me the venue as much in we like shooting because everybody starts coming down on it. But I do see the hope in crypto. And I have a lot of philosophical thoughts on it, but it comes down to the basic thing that's the most difficult thing to get around. And that's what we mentioned before: accountability and truth. Because ultimately, when you talk about a Bitcoin or an Ether or whatever, it is an absolute truth. It is a mathematically provable truth, and it cannot be faked. The system is built around eliminating fraud, lies, and illusion. And because that system now exists and is in the hands of everybody, and that no government can control it, that gives me hope, because I think that once we can agree on what a basic truth is, we can start applying that truth to the other parts of our lives that are filled with lies and deception, and turn those lies and deception away. And I think we're at that point. We're approaching that point, but at the same time, the powers that be don't want to let go of the power that they have. And so I think there's going to be this struggle and this ultimate fight. And I hope that in the very end, the truth wins out, because that is what we need in this world. We need truth. We need a truth that we can depend on to get us through all the lies.
Because I 100% concur with your conclusion about the truth, because that's where I think we're missing the boat, so to speak, on our current debate or what you can say is our current discussion on the fluid nature of our politics. We're missing the truth because no entity has a vested interest in the truth. And I want to thank you because that's no other better point to end this podcast on is the truth. And when you're out there and you're on social media and you're seeing all these people talk, what is their end game? If they have an agenda, if they have a side, if they have a opponent in liberty, because there's only one opponent in liberty, so to speak, and that's the lies and the agendas. Liberty doesn't have a single aspect of a lie, and it doesn't have an agenda. Other than that, you live your life as you so see fit while not harming others. That's liberty. And if we can't have that general discussion without a background or component to the basic truth that people need to live their life as they so see fit without harming others, without engaging in hostile acts, I don't understand why that's so complicated or confusing. You know,
No, yeah.
That's all it is to it. Why can't you can believe who you want to believe? You can worship who you want to worship. You can worship who you don't want to worship. And you know, in the weirdness of that, you can not believe in anything. But if you want to push your agenda against another person simply for the fact that you can't concede that that other person has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then you're not for this world. You can't say that you are, regardless of where you stand on as a believer or non-believer. So I want to thank you for elaborating on that point and bringing that to the forefront of our discussion. I think we have a good time. I look forward to filling you in within the next couple of weeks.
What? How you want to do that? No, I'm
don't
kidding.
ask questions
No.
you don't want the answer to. So don't ask that because I can fuck around with this shit. You know, I'm not an upside down pineapple person, but I like to talk shit. That's my game. When me and my friends of 30 plus years to get together, it's nothing but who can make the greatest insult upon the next person. And typically it's one person in particular that ends up with the brunt of the jokes, but that's what we do, and that's how I like to engage my friends. So within the next couple weeks, I plan on having you back on. But do you have anything in closing? Do you want to plug anything, or you got it?
I mean, you know, you can see me on We Like Shooting. I I post pictures up on Instagram at Savage Winar. You know, I like taking pictures, so there's that. Other than that, I don't know. I just am super happy to be here. I don't get out that often to talk to many other people. I really live in an enclosure here, you know. So no, but I really thank you for having me on because it's a nice break from the regular guys, and it's nice to talk to other people with a different perspective and just really get to have a lot of fun. You know, it's been great. Thank you.
All right. In closing, I like I will say to everybody else, I wish you the best and live free or die.
Hell yeah, brother.
This is the Black Powder Podcast. Thank you for watching.
America, where are you? You seem to be lost. This two-party system has divided you into camps of mindless drones incapable of distinguishing between bullshit and facts. Believing what these asshole Democrats and Republicans say as if their agenda includes you in any other capacity than the pawns that they see you as. But what disappoints me is the Liberty people, specifically the ones that were silent during the Trump era and now have found a voice against government overreach. Mask mandates and vaccinations began in 2020. COVID restrictions and protocols were drafted in 2020. You were silent. Now that we have a new jackass in the White House, you got balls. I don't respect that. But more importantly, how did the government get these powers to impose mandates and the like? It's the same fucking people protesting mandates that have been shouting, just comply, and play stupid games, win stupid prizes. The same bitches that exalt the government as heroes that are the only thing between you and chaos. The same people that found Daniel Shaver's murderer not guilty. The same people on the grand juries that time and time again will not hold government criminals accountable for their actions. You did this shit. The chickens have come home to roost. Live free or die.